Okay. If Jack or anyone wants to confirm.
Yeah, let's just wait to confirm on the stream. So I see that we're still waiting for the foundation. But maybe it's my own internet. So
Jack.
Technology.
Okay.
all right, looks like we're happy now. Thank you, Emerald, for taking extra time on that to figure that out. So, all right, Maggie, let's get started with these questions. And thank you, everyone, for your pause there with us. So, in the case of users who may cause self-harm, while trust and safety is unable to contact authorities, like individuals residing in mainland China, how does the trust and safety team support them? Apart from reaching out to trust and safety, how does the community offer support to users who cause self-harm? So I'm going to copy this question. It is a little bit of a long one, so I'll copy this one into the chat and I'll also copy it over to YouTube so that we can see that question.
Thank you, Jackie. That's a pretty intense question to start off the day, but it's an important one. I'm scanning who is in the room, although I will probably answer most of this. I might ask Jan Eisfeld to help with part of this. So it has been many years now since trust and safety has had to rely on contacting local authorities directly. When I first started at the foundation, that was the only recourse we had. And let me tell you, it is very difficult to call up a hospital or a police person in a local area and say, I work for the Wikimedia Foundation and there's a threat of violence on the internet, because they tend to go, hang up and tell your parents you were using the phone without permission. We fortunately work with professionals now who can help us to connect with people across the world who are able to help with wellness checks or deal with threats of violence as they occur. But I will acknowledge this is not global. There are certain areas where we don't have the connections that I wish we had. And there are also some areas and some situations where a wellness check might actually put a person in danger. So I think that some of the most important things to remember, we do have public pages that we maintain with help avenues for people with professional lines they can call around the world. We are always interested in learning about more reputable, safe places to go. The foundation does curate that list because it would be pretty awful if somebody put something inappropriate on there and one of our people was hurt because they reached out to the wrong place. In my own experience, I will say, in addition to doing this work, I have some experience in my background of working with crisis support hotlines. It's important to listen without judgment. Without judgment is really important. One of the early mistakes that I made was talking to an individual who told me some things about his life, and I was trying to be helpful, and I told him to think of his daughter. And that was a mistake. He's okay, fortunately, but it was a mistake that caused harm to him because he did not feel adequate to parent. And while I was trying to encourage him to see that he had something to live for, what I actually did was cause him to think, yes, for my daughter's sake. Not good. So listen without judgment, just listen and encourage them to connect with professionals who understand how to listen for triggers, how to learn how to help people in their specific circumstances. Don't think that what would work for you will work for them. All you can do is be there for the person and care. And if you know a person well who is in this position, it's good to follow up afterwards just to reach out to say, hey, are you okay? Because sometimes knowing that somebody cares has a major impact. I'm looking at the question again. Yes, so the support we can provide to people who live in areas like mainland China or areas where we don't have connections is very limited. The best support we can offer is to encourage them to reach out to local resources. Nesma, I know you just arrived. Jan, you were here. If there's anything I missed, please feel free to unmute and speak. I'll give you a moment for that. Otherwise, Jackie can move on to the next question.
Thank you kindly. I think you covered all the key parts that community members should keep in mind. We're also distinguishing, just to complete that picture for folks who are interested, between what type of risk factors outreach might create, because it might be that suicidal thoughts themselves create societal risk, or it might be that due to the jurisdiction, being a Wikimedian might create risks, right? And these are sometimes quite difficult to navigate distinct issues, and then there are a few jurisdictions where both of these things can equally be true. I also want to just acknowledge that some affiliates have done some outstanding good work dealing with these crisis situations or supporting individuals dealing with these crisis situations. Not all affiliates are in good positions to do these things either. Also, their constraints are really different from the constraints the Wikimedia Foundation faces. But there are also affiliates that have done very valuable work in that regard. So if people have experience in these issues, looking at whether or not a local affiliate might be having a good track record on those issues can be a valuable additional thing to think about. Thank you.
All right, I just want to also say there have been some links shared in the chat, and I want to encourage everyone to join in and contribute to the Mental Health Resource Center if you have the time and capacity, because this was something started by one of the human rights interns last year, and actually 1 year ago. And this is something that we hope becomes a living document, because of course, we can't necessarily cover all cultures and aspects, and we want to be able to have this information available for anyone. I think that any one of us can say that we want everyone to have the support that they need and feel supported in that time and space of, community and staff, coming from just knowing how hard it is to be online sometimes and how difficult it can be to be human. So please, if you have time to review that and offer feedback, I would gladly take that feedback as well. So if you want to put it on the talk page or reach out to me directly, thank you so much. Okay, now let's go on to the next question, please. Okay, so this one's about the MCDC. We're changing topics just a bit here. So your team has been supporting the MCDC since it was formed. Now that the board has voted no, do you feel like you've wasted your time? And do you feel like you wasted our time? Okay.
Okay, all right. No, it doesn't feel like a waste of time. I feel like we've learned a lot. Often we're lucky to have MCDC people here with us. Today we do not, because I think there's a meeting that conflicts, but I think that the questions that they were asked to grapple with are huge questions, and they've done a lot of thinking and talking, and I myself have learned a lot. And I'm also looking forward to seeing what the feedback is from the vote when it is published, in order to see what resonated with people and what didn't, and what their thoughts and reactions were. I know other people may have different answers to that question, but no, I don't feel like it was a waste of my time, and I don't think it was a waste of other people's time either. I do think it was an important process to go through. I am complete.
Anyone else wish to share on that question at all? And thanks to Carl and one of the facilitators for making us use Complete. That's such a good tool. So Carl, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I ought to also speak to that question, because I've been with the movement project process since the beginning, supporting the working groups and now the movement charter crafting committee. I'm
sorry, Carl, maybe your audio's cut out, or is that just me?
No, it's his audio.
Okay.
I don't know if you're using headphones.
Carol's been having technical issues all day, and
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Okay, sorry. So essentially, it's been a long process, and I understand the frustrations that are there among the people. But at the same time, I do think that we have made progress regarding the conversations that are happening. I think for a first time, truly, we had affiliates gathering regarding certain viewpoints with a summit and now with voting. And I don't think we have had that good level of alignment. I do think that we have fallen short in terms of engaging some of the online contributors, and their voices have not felt as well heard. And I do feel that we have not been as successful talking across the stakeholders, like Wikimedia Foundation, with their affiliates and the online communities, etc. Like we are still falling a bit short. I think the current situation regarding the ratification vote is having everyone's attention. And for me, the big question here is, where do we go from here? I feel the hurt. I feel it myself. But at the same time, I think if we move forward in a constructive way, I think there are options for us to do better and to build on the great work that the Women Charter Drafting Committee have been doing in a rather complex situation. And I really hope that we can, based on this experience, now talk to each other more authentically, more openly, and really be in this mission together and build something together. Like that is my hope. And if that is the reality, then definitely the time has not gone to waste. If some other narratives prevail or pass forward that are not as constructive, then it's trickier. But I still feel that the time we have spent have actually contributed to bringing this movement closer together, or at least bringing us to more authentic conversations regarding some of the key matters that need to be tackled. I'm really looking forward personally to see how the pilots go, because that is something that, based on a complexity theory, we should have been doing for a long while, talking about the Global Council, not just theoretically, but actually trying things out in a certain way. We are finally here. So let's try to make most of the pilots that probably, based on the Board of Trustees letter, will go forward, and then see how we can build on the other discussions and use them for a good thing. So that's my feeling. Yeah, thank you for your kind attention. I completely.
And thank you, Carl, for all of your work and everyone who's put the effort in, community, staff, et cetera, to make this happen. So thank you so much. And I just want to acknowledge how much work has been done, certainly. All right, so let's see. I don't know if we want to ask, I guess I think Cameron's available at this point. So I don't know, Maggie, are you ready to shift to human rights, or do we have any follow-ups from CDC?
Let's go ahead and shift. I'm sure we will come. Well, I'm not sure. Who knows what's coming ahead, but let's shift.
All right. So everyone, back to human rights and all this sorts of heavy. I apologize. So in the context of Wikimedia communities, how should incidents where individuals experiences and perspectives are undermined, dismissed, or attacked, particularly in sensitive situations like conflict zones, be addressed to ensure compliance with human rights principles and the promotion of a respectful and inclusive environment? That's a complex question, so let me paste it here in the chat.
Thank you. Being able to read it will be helpful. And I will be asking for Cameron's support, but I want to start by saying, when we're talking about how to respect people's human rights and promoting respectful and inclusive environment, particularly in sensitive situations like conflict zones, this is every bit as complex as dealing with self-harm, and in some ways has surprising challenges. Things that, frankly, before Cameron and some of the people who work with him came along, I didn't have insight into. I will say it begins with advanced work. If you don't start working on these kinds of issues until they're happening, you're too late. We need policies and practices and protocols, and unfortunately we have some of them, but we still have a long way to go for perfection, that are based around solid human rights principles. We need to know in advance what we're going to do when things go wrong. We also need to really put the investment of time into creating safe community spaces. We have things like the Universal Code of Conduct. It's a long way from being fully operational. We don't have the U4C ready to operate yet. And in order to handle some of the hardest things human beings have to face, like the instinct for people to kill each other, you have to be able to have really hard, sensitive conversations. You have to be able to talk about things that touch on the most visceral parts of us as human beings, touch on our fear of survival, touch on our ability to engage with each other in good faith. And it's a lot to expect people who are under threat to show up as their best selves. In many ways, I would say those of us who are outside of the conflict need to be as generous as we possibly can be in helping to create a safe environment. That means sometimes not leading with blame. Sometimes you have to just find ways to detoxify and make the situation safe for the conversations that need to happen. But accountability is also important. So if you see particularly systems that create unfair environments for vulnerable populations, you have to take on doing something about that. I feel like there was probably something more that I had in mind when I started talking, but I'm just going to pass it over to Cameron, who is here and ready. Cameron?
Thanks, Maggie. And can everybody hear me okay? Just want to be sure I'm on a different connection than usual. Okay, super. First of all, Maggie, thanks for your answer for that. And thank you for it's a very thoughtful question, because it gets to something that I think we can all relate to, just having our perspective undermined in some little or small way. It can happen at the grocery store. It can happen on matters of life and death or serious human rights crises. And so, at least from my perspective, by the way, I'm Cameron. I'm a human rights team lead here at the foundation. One of the things I think is really important, and I think I've talked about this in previous calls, I'm half Iranian, so I've been very much on the experience having a position undermined, and specifically when it comes to Middle Eastern issues. And I think an important part of addressing this question is to ensure that we're having like a high level of cultural awareness, cultural context. What's sarcasm in one culture? What's yes, what's sarcasm in one culture can be considered a real big insult in another culture. It's very different. The Iranians are very histrionic with their politics. We're going to destroy everybody, but then none of them are crazy enough to believe it, for example. And other cultures might take that as a real threat, whereas it's perhaps more poetic language. So I think we work with a lot of on the ground and regional partners to ensure we have a cultural context to understand what's going on. It's really important for our team. Secondly, I think it's, we hold internal staff office hours here at the foundation so that staff can come and talk with us, that we can, not only that the team is educated, but that we can also pass that on to other staff, have them ask questions, connect with us about, issues around, conflicts and, ensuring that people's opinions are heard and that we're hearing them as best as we can in light of the cultural context and the situation that's occurring. But also, it's not just internal. We hold regular community office hours where we invite community members, part of the Wikimedia community, to come talk with the human rights team, to connect with us as a space where we can actually start to have these conversations. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy. Oh, it's a safe space to have these kind of talks. But my whole team, we're actually we are human rights activists, and that's our professional background. So it's not only our job to do that, but it's our calling to sit and listen and connect. There's no real one-shot answer with these kind of things. It is an iterative process, and there's no such thing as total human rights compliance. There is just a process of getting closer to human rights compliance. So hope that answered the question and addressed it. And if not, I will pop in our human rights email address if you'd like to connect with us to discuss more.
I'm going to pop in to say very briefly, sorry, Jackie, I know it's not normal for me to come back, but Cameron triggered me to think about context and how important that is. And even though it wasn't related to human rights, some years ago, I witnessed a conversation between two groups of community members from different regions. One of the groups was using the term buddy in a very casual kind of way to talk to the other group. And the other group comes from my culture, where the term buddy is okay sometimes, but if used in tense situations is considered an insult. And so the first group was trying to be friendly, but were coming across as aggressive because of this weird little cultural trend. And I'm sure we run afoul of those kinds of things constantly. And it is very hard to be generous in interpreting others when you or yourself are in an intense place. There's a question about, were they both with English as a first language? I think they were. I'm not sure, but I think so. Anyway, I am now complete. Jackie, back to you.
Yeah, that is a brilliant point about language and such like that. It's very important. Also, communicating over text is a horrible medium. So it gets the job done, but of course there's such things that can be missed with nuance. So absolutely. All right, so let's move on to the next topic here. There's some questions about the U4C. So the U4C vote failed to get enough people over the threshold to create a full committee. Why do you think that happened?
Well, that's a really good question. And it requires absolute speculation. But since the question is, why do I think? I guess speculation is appropriate here. So to begin with, it's constituted as a very large committee, and it required kind of a threshold of regional votes as well as global votes. And finding people who want to run for it, who also are well known enough that those who are voting may feel confident in putting them into positions that are perceived as requiring a great deal of neutrality might have been a challenge. I mean, when you're talking about putting someone onto what is, like some communities have arbitration committees. You want your arbitrators to be capable of judging things from truly neutral perspectives. And if you don't know a person, how do you know enough to trust them? So I wonder if it had something to do with the fact that not all of the candidates were known. And I'm not sure if we might also have gone for a larger committee to start off with, then we actually would be able to get participants. But I'm very interested in seeing what happens with the next phase of the election, and I'm really curious to learn from other people how they think that went. So that's my response.
Just want to open it up to anybody else in the room if we wanted to take a moment to get any feedback. And thanks, Jack, for sharing the link in the chat to the special election, because the U4C has opened up the opportunity to add more members so they can get the very important work started. All right, Jack, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to speak, Jackie. So I'm Jack Glover, sometimes known as Zeno. That's my Wikimedia username. And I manage a team called Committee Support. So my team was involved in some of the outreach to seat people to the U4C. One of the things that we came up against, I suppose, when you're talking about failing to do something, we came up against a charter which had very specific requirements for the seating. So, like Maggie said, getting people that are well known enough to the global community, because this is no longer a local vote. This is a global vote across the global community. And the charter had specific requirements of how you could seat people, and also the specific requirements of how many people you need to seat for the committee to be effective. So I think that's probably the challenge. And then what maybe was not reflected is also that there are a lot of groups that are vying for community attention. So people only have so many hours in the day that they can volunteer on a committee. So I do want to thank the people that did apply, even the people that weren't successful, because they're basically committing to do a lot of work, and some of this work can be thankless. So want to thank everyone that applied, and especially the people that put time into the process, and also are now putting time into this special election process to get this committee functional. I'm complete.
All right, well, thank you, Jack. Appreciate the link and also that. And nobody listen to Maggie. It's going to be a wonderful experience being on the U4C. It's going to be easy, super easy. No, joking. Everyone knows committee work is certainly something that everyone comes into with an open heart because it is a lot of work, and we definitely want to appreciate everyone who has been on a committee and made this movement better. All right, friends, I want to remind you that you didn't just come here to watch us speak. You came here to get your questions answered. So please feel free to raise your hand to ask a question, add something in the chat. And like I said earlier, if you feel more comfortable messaging me with a question, I'm glad to voice that. So please add your questions and we will gladly address them. So let's go ahead and move on while we wait for you to draft your questions. So Maggie, do you think the UCOC has made a difference?
Yes. I also I carry some secret glee in my heart because we are largely a precedence-based community, which is we tend to be very engineered towards respecting the way things have always been. And the longer a policy is in place, the more it becomes enshrined in the hearts and minds of people. But while there are certainly still challenges, and a lot of them, to living up to the ideals of the UCOC, I have heard many people tell me how the UCOC has made a difference to them, including people who enforce policies who have told me that having clarity has made it easier for them to step into these difficult spaces. As I did mention in chat, for those of you who heard Jackie refer to it, the U4C is going to be a hard job. Making rulings on behavior and working to get people to collaborate well with each other is hard. And we make it easier when we create clear policies. And it's not all about supporting punishment and penalties. It's also about telling people what is okay so that they hopefully can understand how they're supposed to show up in this space. We are not like other internet spaces. And we do have codes that we adhere to. So the more clear we can be, the better it is for all of us. I am complete.
I'll just pause for a moment in case anyone else who has been involved with the UCOC process wants to take a moment, or anybody else in the room, because the UCOC affects all of us for sure. All right, we'll move forward. I also want to notice, DWI, definitely thank you for being on the elections committee and being one of the people responsible for coordinating the elections and making sure that we are running fair elections. So thank you for that. All right, Maggie, let's go to the next one. Okay, we're going to go back to the MCDC process. I think the essence of this one is, what would you have done differently if you could go back and start over on the MCDC process?
Well, among other things, I would take with me the antivirus for COVID, because it would have been a huge help if we could have stopped that sooner and actually met in person and got some of this ironed out. And having made a joke, which I thought was hilarious, I'm now going to ask Carl, who was with the committee from the beginning, if he has any reflections he'd like to share. I, of course, can talk further about this, but I really think he has better perspective on this than I do.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. Are the headphones working now? No? Yes? Yes. Okay. So I think there are plenty of things that could have been done differently. Actually, at this point of time, we are also conducting interviews with MCDC members reflecting on the 2.5 years of process. And some things are also surfacing from various sides. So, for example, we could have been even more intentional and thoughtful regarding the onboarding process and getting things going. Yes, the in-person meeting would have, of course, helped. that was not an opportunity back then. But I think as a support staff and as just coming together, we could have maybe done some things differently in that way that would have onboarded the MCDC members faster, would have helped with the team building between them faster, because it's really diverse group coming from really diverse perspectives. And I think there are things that we could have done in that way. There is a big question regarding the drafting in open that has been raised several times, and especially when it comes to engagement of online community members. Back then, when the Movement Drafting Committee was discussing the methodology of a drafting, it felt like going public and having this messy conversation, especially across the communities, it's not helpful. Like it just gets too messy, and it's difficult to pull the discussions together and actually advance the charter content in that way. So the decision was made regarding the methodology that we will go with rather diverse group of people in the committee trying to pull together the initial trust and then consulting with the movement. In the end, it's difficult to assess whether that was faster or not. And that has raised the questions. We will have to see, especially now, what will be the ratification vote of the online project community members, and especially what are the comments that they will be leaving, to even better assess that part. So that's something that has surfaced several times, that definitely might have been done differently. For me, the key thing, like it reverts back to what I said earlier, is that I think we have not found a meaningful and constructive way how to have truthful conversations across all the groups in the movement. I think we are really lacking there, and we need to do better if you want to respond to the urgencies that are raising in the external trends and the world around us. We need to do better, not talking at us in some social media channel or wiki talk page, but talking to each other, truly listening to each other, learning from each other, and really coming together as a movement. And my hope was that the movement charter process would do that. I don't think we have done all that well, but like I said, I hope that now with the sense of urgency we currently have, hopefully that will outweigh the frustrations we have and we start to have these conversations. If I had a magic wand, I would try to shape that differently from the get-go of the movement charter process. So there would not be things that people now call surprises from different sides, and that we can actually have a constructive conversation as a movement. So yeah, there are many lessons that we are currently reflecting on these things with the whole team and the committee also. Yeah, but that's what I would like to share. And I see also new on this call. We at the first we also struggled some ways with the project management, and if I could change things, I would have Nu as a support staff member much earlier. Like she works miracles, and that's what we owe to such volunteer committees, having a really good project management support from the get-go. So that is something that I would also highlight, and I think MCDC members have enjoyed that. Like that really helped us to make better progress. It came a bit too late. That also weighs in why it all took so long. Yeah, plenty of reflections I have. Thank you for your time and attention.
Well, thank you for that. And Nanur, do you have a follow-up, or do you wish to ask a separate question? You have a direct follow-up about the MCDC?
Yes, I will suppose that this question is asked to me, and I answer to that if I do this. Actually, thank you, Carl, for all your response. Yes, it will be helpful, and if it was me, I will do it to separate this task to small groups instead of and having one body, MCDC, and their support mini groups with them to support them doing this all the way. It's not for or a bunch of people that I never want to be in their place, actually, with all these comments and all this conversation. Hard work with us, with drafting this the charter. This is one, and the second that I maybe wanted to do as well is to involve more the project communities in this. It's not only it was not only the affiliate, but at the end it was most the affiliate. So from the beginning, try to find out the ways to involve the volunteers from our communities, because when I sent the ratification vote for some of my community members that they are not in affiliates, asking them, okay, go and read this and please put your vote. They heard about it, but they asking me, how can this change? Is this good or not? They are the people that are on the projects 2-3 hours per day, you know, but they are far from the movement charter. So involve these people from the beginning would be helpful to getting more to clarify more things, and yes, it will it could help to have different it's not results, we don't know yet, but different things, okay, and ideas. Thank you.
And thanks to Noor for working with other people to get them more involved. So thank you so much for your efforts and inclusion there. All right, so I think let's move on to another question about the MCDC, and then we'll go to a question from YouTube. So this question, what exactly was your role in the movement charter process?
Okay, so our role, I'm going to start from the plural. Our role was to help to support the creation of the group, the Movement Charter Drafting Committee, and to provide them staff assistance and to help pave the path for them to get the resources that they needed, such as for meetings, or we helped in locating and funding an independent facilitation team, such like that. I don't know if Carl or Nu want to add anything about specific staffing or if that's helpful. But essentially, committee support lives within CR&S. This was something that we were sort of just beginning to put together when the then called Movement Strategy and Governance team landed in my house, and we decided to focus on starting this. I will say that personally, I have I feel some accountability in choosing to focus very hard on getting the movement charter question out of the way. And I will be asking Nu in a moment to help with figuring out specific roles. But it was my observation at the time that we get in each other's way and in our own way a lot, because we argue a lot about whose responsibility it is to do or decide what. And I was really hoping that if we could get the movement charter settled, because the movement charter's goal is clear decision-making pathways, that maybe it would be it would be helpful for us to get that down so that we could then move more nimbly and swiftly to the other things. Okay, so if there's any more to add, Nu or Carl, that feel free. Otherwise, we can move on to the next question. You say there's one from YouTube, which is exciting.
I think it's fine based on the touch.
I'm giving space. 'Cause I didn't know if we want to give space for Nu to share anything. Feel free to pop in or not. Just ignore me.
I'm good, Jackie. DWI, so we're good
All
with
right.
the responses.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Nu, for being a wonderful project manager to be on this process. All right, friends, let's move on to a question from YouTube. This one shifts just a little bit about the movement charter. So can the community ask the board to provide an edited draft charter which they would support? I'll paste that in the chat here.
Well, my answer is likely not to satisfy, because my answer is, of course, you can ask the board anything. Whether the board will actually be able to dedicate the resources to doing that, I don't know. The board is a committee, like all the other committees. They are hardworking, they work many hours, and they have many things on their plates. So I don't know, but certainly you can ask, and if I can help in communicating an ask, if that is an ask, I'm happy to do that, but I don't know. I will say, one of the things that I'm not going to name a person's name, although if a person wants to name themselves, I heard somebody say very persuasively about the movement charter drafting committee process and maybe some things that we could have done differently. We just heard about how it might have been better to divide it into smaller groups. It might have been better to divide it into smaller pieces too. In some ways, I think that trying to create one document to rule them all might have been too big of a chunk for the movement to take on in the way that we did. And I'm pretty happy that the board is looking at some of the major issues that people have identified around funds distribution. And I think like technology and how we decide what we're going to focus on in technology, I think these are critical things to be able to do more quickly and for people to feel better about. So in some ways, instead of saying, can you edit the movement charter in a way that you would accept it, it might be useful to say, these are the most important pieces of the movement charter for us to actually get right. And maybe we do it in pieces instead of all in one document, but that's just my thought. Which you didn't ask for. Yes, you can ask the board. I'm done.
And I see the question in YouTube has come as a follow-up here. So give me just a moment here to review this question and then I will vocalize it. Okay, great. So in terms of dispute resolution between the council and the board, so the movement charter drafting committee and the board, term limits and the positions quota, I guess the global council, any of the drafting committee have or plan to work with amendments or the global council size 2? And let me know.
Can you share
Yeah,
that in writing? Because I don't
will.
understand the question. Seeing it written might help.
I will. So,
Okay.
and definitely person on YouTube, let me know if I did not get you correctly.
Okay, so in terms of the intent, this is about the intent of the movement charter drafting committee. So I think maybe in the absence of any of them, I will ask Carl or New if they know. And if the answer is no, we might ask the movement charter drafting committee if they would like to share their thoughts in writing later. So Carl or New, the question is, do any of the movement charter drafting committee plan to work on amendments for dispute resolution between the council and the board, term limits, and council composition quotas?
So currently, many of these materials actually they're in the supplementary documentation, and I don't know from which time point of view the question comes from. These were the last things that were updated on Meta, and as they currently stand, these are not actually part of the materials that are being even ratified. So this is rather a condensed summary of where we have arrived with the movement charter drafting committee discussions, providing the context and suggestions for future implementation. Of course, the future depends also on the outcome of the ratification vote. But to my understanding, the idea was that these materials will be handed over then to the Global Council if there will be one, for them to talk through the rules of procedures and aspects there. So to my understanding, no, there is not a plan for amendments in these materials. Yet it also depends what are the next steps on how we proceed with the process overall. Nu, do you have things to complement based on the discussions we've had with MTDC?
I think you're right on. And I think Maggie mentioned it earlier, we'll wait to see what the comments from the votes are. And I think that will really help to inform whatever next steps are. I want to dive back in briefly. We have a chat in this hangout, and there was a follow-up question about whether it was not the board's plan to implement the movement charter in pieces. And I just want to be clear that, yes, I believe that is the proposal, and I think that might be a good idea. I came up with a metaphor that I like. Doing it as a quilt in pieces that we then stitch together might actually allow us to get it done and to implement it as we go, instead of waiting until we achieve perfection in every aspect. I also think one of the challenges that we face as a movement is we are not agile. We don't respond very quickly when changes are needed or when things go wrong. And I think this is one of the things that we actually have the capacity to be far better than almost any other website in the world. So I would really love for us to figure out how we can kind of maximize all these wonderful people and brains that we have working on these problems.
All right, well, thank you so much for that response and the ongoing engagement. I know there's a lot of conversation happening around this, so thanks everyone for participating still in this conversation. So let's shift a little bit, still talking about the board, but a different aspect. We're going to be talking about the upcoming board selection. So the question is, board candidates were asked, from your perspective, what should the Wikimedia Foundation be prioritizing over the next 5 to 10 years? And why do you see these as the most important priorities? I'd like to know your answer to that, if not for the whole foundation, at least for your area.
Okay. Well, this is an exciting question. Well, I think I've sort of hinted at it when I've been talking about what's big on my mind. Disinformation, we haven't brought up that word in this call. My trust and safety team also works on disinformation. Disinformation, misinformation, political conflict, the fight to define what is true and real. I know Wikipedia is about what is verifiable, not true. But at the same time, these are huge, complicated issues that we're trying to deal with from our disconnected pockets around the world, and working together to answer some of these questions, which are far beyond almost anyone else that I know of, at least in this world, to deal with. Yes, I am very, very proud of us, is a really big deal. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we really have to nail down this working well with each other thing. We really have to get better at helping people learn how to dispute core issues that touch on their hearts without losing sight of the fact that we have to work together and that we are stronger together. We come to the best neutral presentation of information through our disagreements, not through our similarities, through our ability to debate and tackle and question, test. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, this is something we have to figure out. And more than that, we have to figure out to do it in a world that is paying attention to Wikipedia and our sister projects in a way they never did before, where what we say is of increasing importance to the world. So we have to get on top of that. We also have to figure out how we can work together quickly when things happen. It has, I mean, the rise of AI has been faster than I expected. The way that AI is drawing people away from our sites concerns me. The rise of not just people who are opinionated or wrong, but rather people who are coordinating to change information on the internet, these things concern me. And I feel like it is time that we figure out how to be one body, despite the fact that we are seated in so many different places, organizations, volunteers, affiliates, user groups. We have to be one if we are going to fight these things together. And I think that means we really need to align behind a common purpose. That probably sounds very highfalutin, because it's not exactly a strategic operational plan, but if I were suddenly the boss of the world and the Wikimedia Foundation was doing what I thought was important, we would all be coming together and agreeing that we are one with one purpose. There, I'm sorry.
No, I frankly like that. I mean, look at it. We built an encyclopedia that doesn't work on paper, but we're doing it. So yeah, so I think that we can get there, right? Very, very optimistic, Jackie, of course. But hey, it doesn't work on paper, but it'll work, right? All right, so we did have a follow-up from the YouTube conversation, so let's just pivot back there really quickly if we don't mind. So anyone can propose amendments and then ask the board to consider a second draft of the movement charter with any of the such amendments. I wonder if any of the drafting committee members want to do that work themselves. So that might be something that we have to address offline after talking to the movement charter drafting committee, and maybe they might engage in this conversation themselves.
Probably so, but I'm going to also take the kind of boldness to say, have a heart. We talked about leading with compassion in several points in this. It has been very difficult for these people to be on this committee. They have been through it. They have had members come and go. They lost a member through death. They have worked really hard to reconcile some very different opinions. And it may very well be that some of them are still eager to continue this work. But if some of them would like a break, let's celebrate the work that they put in and the things they have achieved, and maybe give them an opportunity to do something else for a little while if they choose. Not that I want to suggest whoever brought that up on YouTube is trying to push them to do work against their will. I feel for those people. I've seen what the struggle has been like.
Yeah, I just want to share, there's been a link shared in the room regarding the board resolution for the movement charter and the next steps. So feel free to view that. So we're getting close to time. So I want to invite one more time anybody who wants to ask a question on YouTube or in the room. Otherwise, we will go to the last question that I have here on my list. Let's see, sorry. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, I was checking on YouTube. So let's see, you've supported committees for a while. Do you have any advice for somebody who wants to be a good committee member? What about who wants to be a good member of the board of trustees?
Yeah, I sure do. But let me see if Jack, who manages committee support, wants to start or if he wants to follow, because I'm going to pull him in. Jack is hands up, so let's go for it.
That's a great question. Just quickly reintroduce myself. I'm Jack Glover, sometimes known as Zeno. I'm going to speak quickly because I think we only have 3 minutes left. So I manage a team called Committee Support, and I've also been on a lot of committees in the movement. And one of the things that I just want people to know is that these committee members do a lot of work. So one of the first things that you need to think about is the time that you're going to have available for the role. And that necessarily means it's going to change the way that you engage with the project. So think about that as well. Once you get onto a committee, you have to collectively explore things and make tough decisions. And these are usually under some pretty tight timelines. Usually have, what you might call a customer who's expecting an answer from you pretty quickly. And then you have to make a decision in a collective context. So those can be difficult to do, especially in the asynchronous nature of the project. So sometimes you do need to meet in a Google Meet room, for example, with people. Maybe people don't realize that committee members often do meet synchronously in a Google Meet room, for example. So sometimes you need to make time on a weekend or in the evening, late in your day. People come from many different time zones. So another thing to think about. You have to be comfortable standing behind a decision that you may not personally agree with because you trust the process and the decision went another way. You have to be mindful that the effect of those decisions can be felt negatively by people or groups, and that the committee and the individual members can be subject to criticism, which is sometimes harsh or unfair. Now, all that's to say, I don't want to scare anyone up applying to be on a committee. Committee work, especially in Wikimedia context, I've found to be very fulfilling and usually quite important: safety, equity, other goals that are being fulfilled by committee work. And the friendships and collaborations that you're going to build on these committees will last a long time. Here's where I'm coming to my sales pitch. I only have a minute or two left. It's going to be an elevator pitch. We're going to be looking for new committee members later this year, and I want y'all to apply. Y'all are movement organizers, your movement volunteers, your contributors, and you know what it takes to be a member of this movement. All committees help members of this movement do their work effectively. I'm going to pass it over to Maggie because she'll probably say something even more profound.
I could not possibly. That was beautiful, Jack. Thank you. I want to say, in addition to what Jack said, because he did say many important things. As you consider how to govern this movement, including your own role in that and volunteering, please remember my own warped staff quote is conflict is inevitable, but combat is not. We can disagree with each other and still find constructive pathways forward without tearing each other down. Especially when you are working with committees and you think that their committee members are not doing the work as well as they can, as well as they should, please approach that with kindness. These are volunteers, and I haven't met very many people who signed up to be on a committee for a bad reason. Most of the people I know go to the work because they want to help. And while they are not perfect, none of us are perfect, there are constructive ways to improve. And it is really essential for those of us who are willing to take on some of the hard work to be good to each other and to model to the whole movement the ways that it are required to keep moving forward through these hard times. Anyway, I'm done.
I'll just wrap that question up as a former committee member myself and add in, sometimes you don't have to be a committee member, but invite others who might be good community members to put themselves forward. Because sometimes, and I think some of you in the call know as well, sometimes people don't view themselves as a strong leader or someone with good insights and thoughts. And it just takes someone to say, you know, you should run for committee, or I like your thoughts, or you're valued here. So sometimes it just takes that motivation to get someone to put themselves forward, for sure. So even if you don't see yourself on a committee, be that motivator to encourage other people around you to, excuse me, see themselves on committees. Sorry, my voice is going. It's time to wrap up here. Apparently my voice is gone. So, all right, friends. Well, thanks for joining us, whether you are on YouTube in the room or seeing us in the future. So thanks, y'all. Bye.